But how do you think we can simplify these or blend these attributes together from a multidimensional learning perspective, right? With the idea of simplifying the way we deliver learning rather than adding layers of complexity to the content or to the infrastructure.
Well, you know what's interesting? If it was just you and I, okay, if you were teaching me how to do something and it were you and I, we would naturally integrate it. You would show me the content. You would ask me a question about my comfort with that. You would see my eyeballs go, and you would actually build in those elements in one-to-one learning. And if we're in a classroom, if the teacher were really good and the students trusted the teacher, you would have the curriculum and then you would adapt it with your questions, your stories, you're talking to somebody over a cup of tea later. The dilemma is when we now make it digital, we separate those elements. I actually think we have to bring them back together again, very much so. Because really what multidimensional is about is that I want to learn something holistically. I want to learn it as a whole. I want the theory. I want the practice. I want to deal with my own readiness around it. I want to expose my confusion. And so we have to think about, when we make it more technology delivered, how do we make it more responsive to the learner? And how do we end up keeping, and you use a great word, which is simple. But I worry that we are in an environment where the learner wants to be one click away. They don't want to do 3 clicks. They want to be one click away from getting what they need. And the weird part in multidimensional, they may need one or others at that moment. And so I think that's where user interfaces are going to become more personalized. I think we're going to look at predictives, including facial recognition and other things that indicate my level of comfort and surprise. And then finally, I think we're going to weave together people learning individually together, which is a weird piece. But I remember my very first trip to India was with Oracle many years ago. And I went to see one of their students taking an online computer-based training. It wasn't called e-learning yet. Okay, and I went to see this one learner, except when I went to the room, there were 9 of his friends with him. Now, they paid one tuition, but there were 9 of them that were learning. Now, I didn't know whether to be excited or insulted by it. Well, it was interesting. So I'm a researcher. So I ended up doing some research about how they did versus others. Guess what? The ones that shared it with 9 had a higher success rate in the program, and eventually got hired doing Oracle programming. So I said to the folks there, I said, chill. You're actually ultimately engaging people in a group process with that. So
I kind of look at it as, so you talk about these hierarchies or such, motivation, social, whatever it may be. I like what Elliott said about the curiosity and readiness. So really what drives anything that we do, in my opinion, is motivation. I think one thing we haven't talked about yet that we have to consider is there was, for a period of time, a lot of documented research about multi-generational learners, and everybody has different needs based on their social structure and whatever. I still think we need to recognize those things, yes, but it's almost like where we're going right now is going to meet all of those people's needs if we can get down to a point where we focus on proficiency and helping people be successful doing something. Because that success breeds continued motivation, which breeds continued success. And people will go seek the knowledge that they need. Our job is just to don't focus so much on, oh, it has to be this type of thing for the millennials. It has to be this type of thing for generational Z. Yeah, you can know that people have different learning styles, but we're being forced to account, in my opinion, for all learning styles based on how society is moving and how how everybody is now one simple community, one mouse click away. I don't know where everybody on this call is from. I don't care. Why should I? We're here to talk about something that apparently is of common interest to everybody who was curious enough to be motivated enough to register. And we don't know what their gender is, what their socioeconomic strategy is, what their learning style is. Who cares? I'd like to believe that everybody's going to learn something from this, or their curiosity is going to be sparked, which is going to motivate them to go seek information.
Yeah.
Now, how do we provide it to them?
Yeah. And I think one of the pieces that you early on asked about whether it's the shift, okay? As we looked at e-learning and then we looked at a pandemic. But let's be very crisp in a sense. The learner doesn't want to be lectured. The learner wants to perform. The learner wants to, if possible, simulate or try something in that process. And the learner generally doesn't want to do it alone. Now, all the stuff we have works, but our model, sadly, is that we have digitized the classroom. But that's not what the learner wants. The learner needs an environment in which they can do that. And I will wrap this thought with, I had the honor of spending some time with Jack Welch, the CEO of General Electric. And the first chief learning officer was Steve Kerr. And he said, we ought to send all of the presidents of the different GE companies to a leadership program. And Jack turned to him and said, let's do something different. Let's put them in a room. Let's have everybody assess how good they are on these 12 business things, renting real estates, promoting people, and rate themselves as being really good, good, not so good, in deep help. And let's get all the people who are really good to help the people in deep help. And that became Jack's board meeting with the CEOs, continuously learning around data, around collaboration, and around shared experiences there. And I think we need to make the digital world a deeply more personalized, data-rich, and collaborative environment, which is what the learning experience model can be. Not how do we pump more content to people, because their off switch is pretty good.
Yep. So if we were to talk about that flow of work concept that comes around a lot, I like what you're saying there, Elliott. I think that coaching and mentoring, that's where most of the learning occurs, to your point. So, as a provider, Voss, Vinok, you and your colleagues and peers, I think that is something for you to look at. The biggest pain point is not how do I make content available. I think we have failed in our efforts to be successful and reduce friction around coaching and mentoring. And that's probably something where we need to spend more time focusing on. Case studies, it's a perfect example of what Elliott gave. And something else to think about too is a lot of training and enablement, regardless of the domain or industry, is always focusing around processes, procedures, policies, things of this type. I don't know about you guys, but I've been in many companies during my career where I was asked to provide training on these things, and these things weren't even completely thought out yet. So we also need to, if we are going to have that formal and reinforced part of the training, make sure that the processes, procedures, policies, tactics, techniques, whatever that we're providing enablement on to meet the readiness need, it would be nice if they were well thought out enough that we could actually provide training against them. Instead of it continually being a constructivist learning experience, discovery in a rubber room. But let's focus on finding a way to making coaching and mentoring, using all the benefits that technology offers us now. Let's make that easier to do. And then be able to track, was it easier? Not just because somebody attended a case study discussion or they were assigned a mentor or a buddy or whatever. What was the business outcome that came out of that? Was the salesperson able to get to a close faster as a result of having that versus an immersive sales kickoff? Let's look at those type of capabilities.